Welcome to the Base Path Podcast, brought to you by New England Baseball Journal. I'm your host, Dan Guttenplan, along with today's co-host, Pat Donnelly. Pat's going to be helping us out in this spring with both prep baseball coverage as well as MIAA coverage, which is Massachusetts high school baseball. Pat, thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to get going with the spring season.
Yeah, I want to introduce you a little bit to our audience so they know you are just coming off covering the hockey season, the high school hockey season in Massachusetts, and the prep hockey season as well. What was it like trying to kind of dive in and learn that on the fly?
Yeah, so I knew a little bit about, MIAA hockey just because, having gone to Malden Catholic and kind of being in that space for a little while. But after that, like leaving high school, my entire focus was like NCAA hockey, pro hockey. So it was a lot of like learning on the fly. But diving right in, you get a good feel of like what teams are always good and who's who and stuff. So it was a whirlwind. It was a busy season. It was a lot of fun. NEPSAC playoffs are like a week-long sprint. I kind of like the way they do that, whereas MIA drags it out, but then you have the marathon day at Sunday at the Garden.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, the MIA high school tournament usually lasts like 2 weeks for baseball too, and then it's all, you get like 3 state championship games on a Friday night and then 3 on Saturday. Last year it rained, but anyway, it's been nice kind of having you aboard for or at least for the preview coverage. You've already done some stuff for baseball that's going to be in our first spring magazine here, as well as it's going to go up on our website at baseballjournal.com. You did such a great job on hockey that I'm really excited. You'll definitely add to our coverage this spring. What have you kind of found in your intro, trying to get acclimated to the baseball scene in New England?
It was specifically with the MIAA scene was been a lot of my focus in the early going. I feel like I've seen, a lot of the strengths of these teams is in the pitching staffs, which I was kind of surprised about. Not sure if that's, a correct first impression or not. And then, just a lot of how it's really interesting in baseball. The good teams are a lot of the public school teams, which you don't get a lot in hockey. Like in D1 hockey, it was St. John's Prep against Winchester, it was David versus Goliath. Yep. Where if you had BC High against Taunton in MIA baseball, it'd be a pretty even matchup.
Right. Yeah. No, I remember that about covering high school hockey. I worked in the newspaper business for a while, and it was, like you said, Catholic Memorial was in there every year, and St. John's Prep obviously was always competing for state championships, and a lot of that Catholic conference. And there's a little bit of that in baseball too. Like BC High is always good. Zavarian won a state championship a few years ago. Some of those Catholic conference teams always compete. So it'll be interesting. But let's start with, so we're going to do the prep baseball preview now. And I'm going to kind of be more on that coverage this spring. You're going to be more on the MIA. So I think the way we could do this is more like you interviewing me about the prep baseball scene. We can have obviously a conversation about it, but I've been on this beat for a couple of years now. So if you have any questions, one thing I do want to comment on, you mentioned that a lot of the strength is on the mound. And I think at the high school level in Massachusetts and even a little bit on the prep level, if you are, a D1 prospect, a lot of times you are also pitching, even if that's not your path at the college level. It's just because a lot of these kids can throw 90 miles an hour just from, playing shortstop and training all year round for baseball. So it's a little bit similar to on the prep level. There's a lot of guys who are on the mound, at least, in closing roles or something like that, if they are D1 commits. But let's talk about high school or a prep baseball scene around New England.
Yeah. Starting off where, we're kind of COVID's in the rear view now, but obviously a lot of things have changed. How do you think the level of play has sort of changed in the NEPSAC?
Yeah, it's really improved, I would say, coming out of COVID. I think a lot of what had ended up happening, the way the landscape really changed is college baseball in general. A lot of people are dipping into the transfer portal now, so there's not as many opportunities for incoming freshmen, natural freshmen. So a lot of these guys are taking time to do a PG year, or they're, switching to prep to try to get a little more competition, I would say, a little more consistent competition. There are some really good teams in the MIA, but you're more likely to see D1 arms on a regular basis in at the prep level. So a lot of guys transferred from high school, public high schools, or even private high schools like St. John's Prep or, Malden Catholic, some of those schools, and are at prep level, prep programs for a year or two now. So I really do think the play has improved. You see as many as 10 D1 commits on some of these prep programs. And these schedules, also Austin Prep has moved from MIA, and they were coming off a state championship in 2021 when they made the move, or 2022, because last year was their first year. So the prep, not only is there a new program that's, they went 18-4 last year, so they're already one of the strongest programs in prep, but a lot more players are taking that PG year or even just transferring in the middle of their high school career to try to get a little bit more exposure at the prep level.
Yeah, and I feel like that's something you kind of see across all the sports, especially with the transfer portal craziness these days, where kids have to wait longer for commitments, or more kids are flocking to prep. So that's pretty interesting to see it also flowing over into baseball.
I know, yeah. Even watching this NCAA tournament, the March Madness for basketball, you see a lot of that, 24-year-old players leading these teams to upsets, and you're like, man, the transfer portal. I heard Deion Sanders, or Coach Prime, whatever you call him, this week saying, we do all our recruiting in the transfer portal. So that's why I'm not doing home visits for kids, because there's no point in going to somebody's college campus and trying to recruit them to another one. He's like, we're not going after 17-year-old high school kids anymore.
Yeah, and you see it, a lot of it March Madness, or hockey playoffs right now. A team loses, kids instantly in the transfer portal.
Oh yeah,
it's crazy.
Yep.
But moving along in prep, some sort of changes to the landscape. A new ISL tournament, ISL underclass game. What are sort of your thoughts there?
Yeah. So the ISL, this was kind of under. They were trying to get the movement and the momentum going for an ISL playoffs. The problem is, a lot of these other conferences had it. Like Founders League has a playoffs. FAA, the Fairchester Athletic Association, has playoffs. Western New England Prep Baseball League and Central New England Prep Baseball League. So the ISL was kind of the last one to go. The problem was a lot of those guys are traveling home right after Memorial Day. They're living on campus at these ISL schools, and then they're home for the summer. So you really have to bang out the ISL tournament probably in the last week of May. And so some coaches weren't as into that, because now I think it's going to be a 13-game regular season. Which is short, but then these teams make the postseason. They'll probably, if you lose, you may end up playing like a losers or consolation bracket game, just to kind of boost the schedule a little bit and get the 15, 16 games in. But a lot of the coaches were in favor of it. They're excited about it. Having a clear-cut champion with a 16-game schedule. A lot of those teams, a lot of the seasons would end with co-champions. And I think the ISL coaches really want to have an outright champion. So that's exciting. And the ISL underclass game started last year for the first time. And it was a huge success. A lot of those guys, were getting offers coming out of that, whether it could be D3 offers, but even it's kind of a last chance recruiting thing at the ISL. A lot of these guys are playing summer baseball for travel teams, but it was like the last chance to put on that ISL team's jersey. Everybody gets on the same field at the same time. You see who stands out, and there was a lot of recruiters from Ivy Leagues and NEPSAC schools looking for those 24s a year before they're going to be on campus. So that was a great opportunity. They're going to do that again this year in year 2. So those were exciting things to happen in the ISL, and now they're kind of on par with all those other NEPSAC conferences that have a champion at the end of the season.
Yeah, especially, you look at the tournament, sort of creates more high-stakes games that are even more valuable for recruiting, too, for kids to play in.
Yeah, and I think it'll be really cool to see teams set their rotations for the playoffs. With the ISL, a lot of times it'd be like Belmont Hill going against Tabor Academy in the second week of May, and you didn't have the best pitchers on the mound just because of the way that was set up in the rotation. It'll be kind of cool to see the strategy behind, all right, do we want to have a guy... I'm trying Brady Miller, who is Belmont Hill. Do you save him for a potential championship matchup, or do you try to use him in the first game? It'll be fun to see that stuff play out, which is the way it's been going on in other conferences. So the ISL will have a chance to do that too.
Yeah, for sure. And looking at coaching changes, one right in our own backyard here at the studio, Milton High switching to Milton Academy is Brendan Morrissey. Right.
Yeah, and that was a huge move for me, because they're two-time state champions at Milton High School, and he did such a great job there. And I think the move kind of cements the case that, a lot of these coaches are keeping an eye on prep baseball and seeing that the level of play has really improved over the last few years. Brendan had a lot of local ties. He went to Milton High School, but he's staying in the same community now, and he's got a really good team there. He's got Davis Kahn is a really good pitcher at Milton Academy, and he's got some guys from Matt Duffy's travel program that are on his team there too. So I would bet, Milton Academy, they obviously had a really good coach in Matt Petherick. He's worked with NEB, Northeast Baseball, but he's going to step down, and now Brendan Morrissey will have a chance to see if he can have just as much success at Milton Academy as he had at Milton High School.
Yeah, and speaking of Matt Duffy, he's going to St. Sebastian's.
Yeah, and he's an ISL guy too. He's a former pro baseball player. I think he was a ISL MVP at St. Sebastian. So he's had a lot of obvious playing experience. He started that travel program. And I always find these coaches who have ties into those travel programs have a little bit of an easier time recruiting because they know the landscape. They know who the 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds that are coming up that can make immediate contributions, or even you can project, hey, when this kid's, a junior, senior in high school, he's going to be a D1 prospect. Yeah. And you can start recruiting there. So Matt Duffy, I think, is another one that's going to make a big impact in the ISL and, in NEPSAC, at the NEPSAC level in general.
Yeah, one more coaching change we want to look at is Kevin Barnaby going to Groton.
Yeah, he's a Nor'easters guy with their travel ball program. So he's another one that's going to make an impact in the ISL. He's definitely done a good job with the Nor'easters, has a lot of respect in the baseball world, and I would expect to see that program do well under him as well.
Definitely. And just flipping the page back to 2023 really quick, you had Worcester Academy dethroning Phillips Andover, Avon Old Farms beat Loomis, finished number 2, Belmont Hill at number 3. They won the ISL. What did you sort of make of last season?
Yeah, that was a surprise to me. I think Phillips Andover had that long time reign as the top team in New England under Kevin Graber. He took a job in the Chicago Cubs organization, and by the end of the year last year, he was the Double-A manager.
Oh, wow.
So he's, matriculating quickly through that organization. It'd be interesting to see if he can ever get a big league manager job because he's kind of projecting on that course or on that track. But him leaving Andover, obviously you knew that was going to be a little bit of a transition. Chris Powers is doing a really good job there. He's the football coach on campus as well at Phillips Andover. And he kind of stabilized that program. Last year, they had a first-round draft pick in Thomas White. But you're right, Worcester Academy did dethrone them. They had a better regular season, so Worcester Academy went into the CNEPSBL. That's the name of the conference. They went into that postseason as the number 1 seed. Phillips Andover ended up losing to Dexter Southfield in a semifinal matchup, and they just hammered Thomas White in that game. It was like the worst start of his prep career, but ended up getting, obviously he's a first round draft pick either way, and he's throwing 98 now in the Miami. I believe he's in the Miami farm system. But Dexter had unbelievable offensive, an offensive effort in that game against Worcester Academy, or no, that was against Phillips Andover. Then they went to faced off with Worcester Academy in the final, and Dexter fell short there. Worcester Academy was loaded last year. They had a lot of D1 prospects. Gabe Pitts went to Central Connecticut State. The one thing that Dexter has a lot back this year too, but Worcester Academy has Maverick Rizzi on the mound. He's probably the number 1 pro prospect, I would say, in New England in terms of a pitcher. He throws in the 90s. He's 6'8". And just a really tough matchup, for anybody at this level. So the Worcester Academy will be good again. Dexter will be really good again. Phillips Andover has a lot back. So that CNEP SBL will be interesting to watch again this year.
Yeah, definitely. And, looking ahead to this season, we've talked about how Andover has been a long-term staple here in the prep scene. They got to be among the favorites this year, right?
Yeah, Andover has really good players. They have Danny Flynn, who's a really good standout. Isaac Lamson was like kind of the hero of their championship win 2 years ago. And they have a lot of good pitching. Andover will be, right at the top. I would imagine they'll come in as a top 5 team in New England, that maybe even in the top 3. Dexter is going to be great. They have Matt Conti behind the plate. They have Chase Hartzell returning as their number 1 pitcher. Avon Old Farms will be really good. They have, several D1 commits. Aiden O'Connell and Alex Grant are both headed to Vanderbilt, which is among, if not the top college baseball program in the nation. So they have two of their starting pitchers will be up there. And then, there are some teams like Austin Prep, who I said was 18-4 last year. They're strong in their senior class this year. Evan Ventura is committed to West Point. And they have a couple other guys. Jake Zawatsky is going to UMass Lowell, and Brad McCafferty is he's 25, but he's committed to Duke, and he's a catcher. I actually think he's a 26. Yeah, he is a 26. So they have a lot of talent all through in all different classes, and Austin Prep could be up there again this year.
Yeah, and a couple more favorites to go through. Would imagine Worcester might be right back there to repeat.
I would think so. Yeah, they arguably have the best pitcher in New England, so anytime you can put him on the mound in a big game, you're going to have a chance. They still have offense back. Mike Abraham, really good coach. He came from NEB and did a really nice job in his first season to take them to the top of the New England prep scene. And he's doing a good job with recruiting too. So Worcester Academy, I would imagine, will be back. We had mentioned Phillips Andover, Dexter, Avon Old Farms, Cheshire Academy they're in the Western New England Conference, and they have I want to say like 10 college commitments or 12 on their roster right now. So it's basically a college baseball team.
Pretty good.
Yep.
And then, you mentioned AP, maybe a couple other sleepers in there, whether it's Putnam Science, Canterbury, Deerfield.
Yeah, we've been doing stuff on Putnam Science, it feels like, a lot in the last week or two, but they have been recruiting international players. They've got, I want to say, like 7 or 8 guys from the Dominican Republic this year. So that'll be exciting for them. Cheshire, a little bit under the radar, but with all those D1 commits, it's hard to say they're under the radar. Austin Prep, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they're a top 5 team. Salisbury is a really good Salisbury, it's tough to say they're under the radar too because they've won their conference a few years in a row, but they have a lot of D1 prospects, and they kind of have a feeder system for the Naval Academy. They're like, they have a good, I don't know if it's an ROTC program or what it is, but it's kind of a stepping stone, and they have a lot of guys every year who are committed to military academies.
Yeah, and then we've mentioned, I'm sure, a couple of these guys already, but who are the top pitchers you're looking for this season? Yeah,
I would say Maverick Rizzi for Worcester Academy is definitely one. I mentioned the 2 guys at Avon Old Farms. Aiden O'Connell is a really good left-handed arm. He was a New Hampshire State Player of the Year in Bedford, New Hampshire, and his teammate Alex Grant, another left-handed arm. Both those guys are in the low to mid 90s. They're both really good. Austin Prep has good arms, and Jake Zawatsky, he's going to go to UMass Lowell. Evan Ventura is, I mentioned he's going to West Point. Both of those guys are probably in the low 90s in terms of velocity. Belmont Hill's got ISL Pitcher of the Year Brady Miller coming back. He's a Boston College commit. Who are some other guys? Let me look through. Canterbury School has Andrew Rondini, who is a College of William and Mary commit. Last year he went 4-0 with a 1.8 ERA with 58 strikeouts. So he's really good. I mentioned Cheshire Academy with all their D1 commits. They have Garrett Snyder, who's committed to the University of Notre Dame. He's in the low 90s, 6'5", 240 pounds. So he's going to be a big-time prospect. And his teammate, Tyler Stone at Cheshire Academy, is committed to Virginia Tech. So he's a really good pitcher. Don't want to forget anybody. Dexter Southfield, I mentioned, has Chase Hartzell. He's a BC commit. Governor's Academy has Christian Oliveira, who was throwing 96 all of a sudden this spring. So he's a guy to keep an eye on from a scouting perspective. A lot of those college coaches are going to be looking, or not college coaches, MLB scouts will be looking at him. He's committed to UMass. Hampton Hall has Gavin Lyons, who is committed to Texas. He was probably, arguably, maybe the most efficient of any New England pitcher last year. He's 23-0 over the last 2 seasons, best pitcher in Connecticut, according to his coach. John Payon at Lawrence Academy, really good pitcher in the ISL. He could, with Brady Miller, those might be the top 2 guys. And then I mentioned Davis Kahn from Milton Academy. He's going to be back this year. He'll be really good. Robert Brown, Phillips Andover, is a Penn State commit with Mike Gambino now there from BC. So he's a guy that could definitely be a good arm. And then Salisbury School, I should just mention, Thomas O'Connell's more of a position player. He's committed to University of Virginia, but he'll definitely be a difference maker this year as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned O'Connell. Who are some other sort of position players you're looking at this year?
Yeah, Westminster, I should have mentioned Wyatt Nadeau. He's going to be going to Vanderbilt too. He's in the 25 class, but his teammate, the catcher, Easton Mass, he's probably one of the best catchers, along with Matt Connie at Dexter Southfield. Colin Larson at Williston Northampton. He's been committed to BC for a while. He could have a really good season. Wichenden has Brian Connolly, who is, I think, the Maine State Player of the Year, Gatorade State Player of the Year in Maine. He's a good middle infielder. He's committed to Wake Forest, so he's going to be really strong. Austin Prep, I obviously mentioned Bradley McCafferty, Evan Ventura, and Jake Sawatsky is a great two-way player, so he'll be really strong for them. Van Leot at Avon Old Farms, he's a Holy Cross commit. He's a really strong player. Ben Williams, also on that Avon Old Farms roster, is going to BC. Who do we have in the ISL? I'm trying to think of guys. Brady McCutcheon with BB&N. He's a good two-way player. Canterbury has a couple of good two-way players. Cole Sylvia is a middle infielder for them. And then Cheshire Academy has Jaden Novak, really good position player who could contribute for them immediately too. So a lot of good hitters. Gabe Malloret, I should mention, Dexter Southfield, also a really good player. He's he could be a two-way player. Last year he didn't pitch much for them, but he's a BC commit. He's got a lot of power and speed, so he could be a guy that jumps out this year too. Yeah,
whether it's some of the pitchers we mentioned, like Rizzi, Oliveira, some of these position guys, how many of those guys do you think could project as pro prospects?
Mav Rizzi is definitely a pro prospect. He'll get scouted pretty heavily. He's performed in some of those big elite showcase events over the years. Christian Oliveira is going to be scouted a lot this spring after throwing 96. Once you kind of hit that on the radar gun, guys are going to come out and watch you. Matt Connie with Dexter, good pro prospect. And while people are out there watching him, they may take a look at Gabe Malloret, who's a 25. But, it's never too early to start looking at those kind of guys. Gavin Lyons, University of Texas commit at Hampton Hall, could certainly be scouted. And on his team is Logan Carbonneau, who's UConn commit, maybe a pro prospect, depending on the way he develops. And then Loomis Chaffee has Gabriel Tirado, who's been in USA Baseball farm system. He's committed to UConn and been, one of the top guys in New England since he was a freshman in high school. So he'll be a potential pro prospect. A little early to tell on some of the younger guys, the 25, 26s. But, those are the guys, the upperclassmen who might get scouted this spring.
Yeah, just a couple more. We've kind of been going rapid fire here. But when you look ahead to this season, are there any predictions you want to make, any bold claims you want to stake your name to?
Oh, man, let me think about bold claims. All right, let's start with who will finish number one in New England. Worcester Academy was there last year. I don't know if they have enough to repeat. They definitely have Maverick Rizzi and some really strong bats. I'm going to say Avon Old Farms is going to finish number one.
Okay.
When you have Aiden O'Connell and Alex Grant, both Vanderbilt commits as your number one and number two, you string together a really good record. They have a lot of offense, too, a lot of guys who have contributed to that program for a long time. I think it'll be hard to beat them. Westminster, I could see as a team that, gets themselves into maybe that top 5 mix as a surprise team. Phillips Andover, I bet will be in there. And then Dexter, will be right there. So if I were to pick it, I'll go Avon Old Farms 1, Dexter 2, and then I will probably say Phillips Andover 3. In terms of the top players in predicting, Maverick Rizzi, I think, will probably be right up there among the top pitchers. Gavin Lyons 2, and then maybe just to give you a third one, maybe say Aiden O'Connell, with Avon Old Farms as your third top pitcher, and then I'll give you 3 hitters to keep an eye on. Matt Conti's got to be in that mix as a top 3 player. I'd probably say Jake Sawatsky. Keep an eye on him with Austin Prep. If Austin Prep is going to be great, which they look like they will be this spring, he could have a big part of that. I didn't even mention Christian Oliveira. So let's mention him as a two-way player, because if you're playing shortstop and throwing 96, you're going to make a big impact in the ISL.
Yeah. So we're going to hold you to that top 3 in a couple months here. So we can go back and look at the tape.
Yeah, yep.
But this last one is one that's gotten a lot of runway on the Rinkwise podcast for hockey. Because, last year, Northfield Mount Herman, I believe, was unanimously the worst rink in the NEPSAC. And they announced over the summer that they're building a new rink.
Oh, really?
And then this year, Evan and I have talked quite a bit about Noble's rink kind of being, a little dated, a little old, not the best. And their girls coach, Tom Reeser, has been saying he's been beating the drum for a new rink. So who would you say has the nicest facilities on the prep side?
Oh, nicest facilities? Phillips Andover has great facilities over there. The baseball field is very nice. Some of their other facilities might be even a little bit nicer. Dexter has a really nice facility. I've been there for some stuff. Let's see. The ISL schools, all very nice. BB&N, very nice facilities. Phillips Exeter is really good. I would probably say, just because I live in Lowell, so I always like to cover games of Phillips Andover because that's an easy drive for me. So I'm going to go Phillips Andover.
Okay. And is there anyone you want to put on notice for their facilities?
Oh, geez. Let me think about that. All right. I'm going to say, man, I really don't want to do that. I'm trying to think of some of these schools advertise with us. So
yeah.
I should probably not do that. But yeah, that was all right. Well, that's our prep baseball segment. Let's go to our producer David Yaz for our 3 up, 3 down segment.
3 up, 3 down.
All right, gentlemen. In this episode of 3 Up, 3 Down, you will each get 3 trivia questions. They're kind of on the offbeat side, but you can be the judge. They're fun. Dan, since you're the host of the show, you get to either go first or defer the pick.
Okay. And I have to tell you before the question.
Yep. I have a feeling I might get swamped here.
Yes.
I'll defer it and give myself a little more time to think about it.
All right, Pat. Question number 1. What is the only letter of the alphabet that does not appear in any Major League Baseball teams?
Oh, man. I'm going Q.
Q is absolutely correct. Well done. Yes.
Wow.
You knew it wasn't X, so Q might be the next natural pick.
What team has Z in it?
Arizona.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Well, there's got to be. Is there a Z in the nickname though of a team? Now I can't think of. Anyway, we'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
Dan, what Major League Baseball team has a so-called rally monkey as a mascot?
Is it the Angels?
The Angels is correct. Well done. Yes. I believe do you know what their theme song is? Or at least it was at one point.
Hey, hey, we're the Monkeys?
No. It was Spirit in the Sky by Norman Greenbaum, which I always thought was clever. I don't know if they still played that there. Pat, to you. Who was the first Major League Baseball player to win Rookie of the Year and MVP in the same season?
Oh, man.
I bet Dan knows this. No?
Fred Lynn?
That's
Wow.
correct. I didn't say you could answer. You
I wasn't going to get Freddie.
Okay. Well done. Dan, to you. Which Major League Baseball manager holds the record for the most career ejections?
Oh, Sparky Anderson?
Sparky Anderson is incorrect.
Oh.
Pat, you have a chance to steal.
Ooh, this is a total shot in the dark, but Bobby Valentine.
No. If I told you had the Bobby right, would you have another guess?
No.
Bobby Cox.
Bobby Cox is correct. Probably just because he's done it for so long. He was surly.
I've seen him get ejected from multiple games when I was in Philadelphia. He'd probably get kicked out of like a dozen games a year.
Pat, it is your turn. Name one of the Major League Baseball franchises that does not have a mascot.
Ooh.
Another mascot question.
Does the rally monkey count?
Yeah. No.
Okay. I don't think the Angels have one.
Well, you're correct. Dan, for extra points, can you name either of the other 2? There are only 2 others that do not have mascots.
Okay. Texas Rangers?
No. know who their mascot is. But,
Yeah. Let's see. Colorado Rockies?
no, they're both storied franchises.
Oh. Do the Yankees have a mascot?
You're correct about the Yankees. They do not have a mascot. The Rangers feature Rangers captain who looks like sort of an antelope in a Rangers costume. He looks very strange. I don't know. All right. I forgot whose turn it is. Whose turn is it? You guys know?
I think I just did that one, right?
All right. Yeah. All right. Final question for all the money. And Pat, you can take it. Who was the first Major League Baseball player to have his number retired?
Oof. Lou Gehrig.
Oh, my goodness. Check out the brain on Pat.
Wow. This is a March Madness type of upset.
Well done. I lost track of who had who many questions, but that's pretty impressive, Pat. And did you know that one, Dan?
I would have guessed Lou Gehrig, but I wasn't. That would have been a guess.
Yeah, that was a
So
guess
he
too.
was number 4, 5? Who knows?
Yeah, because Babe Ruth
think
was
4.
3 and he was 4, I think.
He was 4, yeah. Well, because if I'm not mistaken, they used to give players numbers based on the batting order,
I think that's
right?
right.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
Ruth was 3rd and Gehrig was 4.
Yeah.
Batting cleanup. You both did fair, but Pat's the winner, and congratulations. And back to you, Dan. Close things out.
Thanks to Pat Donnelly, who will be joining us for the entire spring baseball season for New England Baseball Journal and the Base Path Podcast. Rate, review, subscribe to the Base Path Podcast for your preferred platform. Thanks to our producer, David Yaz. The Base Path Podcast is a Seamans Media production.